8.3 is over ions. So we previously talked about the structure of the atom, and we talked about the mass of an atom. And remember that atoms can have different mass depending on the number of neutrons. So if they have more neutrons, it'll have a greater mass. If it has less neutrons, it'll have a lower mass. Okay, today we're going to be talking about ions, and remember that those are known as isotopes. So these are known as ions, and it means that they're going to have a different charge. So ions are just atoms that have a different charge because they have a different number of electrons. Okay, so remember it cannot have a different number of protons because if it has a different number of protons, it is a different element. So if it is positively charged ion, it has more protons than electrons. If it is negatively charged, it has more electrons than protons. Okay, so it only changes charge by gaining or losing electrons. So if it's positively charged, it means it's lost electrons because it lost negative charged particles. If it is negatively charged, it has gained electrons or gained the negative charge. If the protons and electrons are balanced, it is known as a neutral atom. Okay, so if we look at these three, the way that we write out ions are we have the symbol, and then if there is no superscript, it's going to be a neutral atom. But if it does have a charge, it's going to have a superscript where here it tells us it's a +1, here it's a -1 charge. Okay, so all three of these are carbon. Okay, because all three are carbon, as a reminder, carbon has a particular amount of protons. Okay, so we can look at the periodic table and find carbon here. It has 6 protons. And so you'll see that each of these has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 protons. So each of them has 6 protons because if it had less or if it had more, it would not be carbon anymore. Okay, so for the first one, for it to be neutral, we're going to have an equal amount of electrons to protons. So you'll see because we have 6 protons, if it's neutral, we're also going to have 6 electrons. Okay, for this one, we became more positive, meaning we lost 1 electron. So when we lose 1 electron, we now have 5 electrons to the 6 protons. Okay, so there is 1 positive left over that's not canceled out, which gives it a positive +1 charge. Okay, here we have a -1. Remember, if it's negative, it's going to gain 1 electron. So instead of 6 to make it neutral, we now have 7 electrons. And so these all cancel out, and we're left with a single negative charge, giving it a carbon charge of -1. Okay, so how many protons and electrons would a neutral lithium Li have? So if we go find lithium on the periodic table, and it's actually just out of this, here is lithium here at this very far corner. It does have a, so if I click on it, it has 3 protons. It does have 3 protons because its atomic number is 3. Okay, and if it is a neutral atom, it's going to have the same amount of negative charges as it does positive, so it's going to have 3 electrons. Okay, how many protons and electrons would chlorine have? So if I go back to my periodic table, I find chlorine, it's going to have 17 protons, okay, because of its atomic number. And because it's -1, it means it has an additional electron added on to it, so it's going to have 18 electrons. Okay, so -1 means that there's 1 extra electron. Remember, we can't change the proton number. Okay, for the next one, how many protons and electrons does carbon have? Carbon +4 have. Okay, remember we looked at carbon before, but carbon has 6 protons. Okay, and if we have +4, if it's positive, it means we lost electrons, we lost negative charge. And in this case, we've lost 4 of them. Okay, so 6 minus 4 will give us 2 electrons. So that +4 means we lost 4 electrons. Moving on to some additional practice. What element is listed to the right and what is the ion name? Okay, so remember the identity of the element is always going to be the number of protons, or positively charged. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 protons. So I go find element number 5. Its identity is boron. Okay. So it has 5 protons. It has 6 electrons. I can just count the number of electrons. So because it has 1 extra electron, it's going to have a -1 charge. Okay, so my ion name is going to be B, which stands for boron, -1. Okay, so it ended up gaining 1 electron. For the next one, what element is listed to the right and what is the ion name? Okay, so to figure out what element it is, we count how many protons. It has 3 protons and 2 electrons. So 3 protons, I go find element number 3. Again, it's kind of off of my screen, but here it is. It's lithium. Okay, so lithium is the identity of my atom. Okay, because there is 1 less electron than proton, it is going to have a +1 charge. So my ion name will be Li plus 1, and it lost 1 electron. Okay, and then lastly, what element is listed to the right and what is the ion name? Okay, so counting, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 protons, 6 electrons. They are equal, which means that they would cancel out and it becomes neutral. So then I just find element number 6 on the periodic table, which is carbon. So the ion name for this is just C. Okay, there's no plus or minus a number because there is no charge, it's just neutral. So just carbon, so it did not lose or gain. Okay, the important part about ions is you cannot gain or lose protons because it would change the type of atom. We can only gain or lose electrons.